It started as one of those spontaneous trips, the kind you plan with friends who are desperate to get away from their routines. We weren't the camping type, really. We liked the idea of it more than the bugs and the cold and the weird sounds at night. But that weekend, something just told me we needed the woods. So we packed up, grabbed our tents and sleeping bags, and drove out to a patch of forest none of us had ever explored before. It wasn't a campground, no facilities, no map, just thick trees and a narrow dirt path that wound deeper than we expected. There were 5 of us. Me, my best friend David, his younger cousin Marcus, and 2 friends we'd met at work, Jenna and Tom. We hiked for maybe 2 hours before we found a small clearing near a shallow creek. The place felt untouched, almost too perfect, like it had been waiting for us. We set up camp, built a fire, joked around, and for the first few hours everything felt peaceful. Too peaceful. That first night, something strange happened, but it was subtle. Around the time we all started to settle into our tents, David swore he heard footsteps near the trees behind our camp. He thought it might have been a deer or maybe someone passing through, but we hadn't seen a single person all day. He didn't make a big deal out of it, and none of us really took it seriously. We just figured the woods were doing what woods do, making sounds that city people like us weren't used to. But I remember waking up in the middle of the night, not to a sound exactly, but to the absence of one. The forest was dead silent. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just this heavy stillness pressing down on everything. It was like the air itself was holding its breath. I lay there for a few minutes, wide-eyed, trying to tell myself it was nothing. But then I heard it, a slow, steady crunching, like someone was walking barefoot on dry leaves just outside my tent. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The sound circled around me, once, twice, then stopped. I waited, frozen, for what felt like forever, and then it was gone. The next morning, everyone was a little on edge, though no one really admitted it. We kind of laughed it off. "Too many horror movies," someone said. But when I looked at Jenna, I could tell she hadn't slept. Her eyes were sunken, and she kept glancing over her shoulder like something was watching her. When I asked if she was okay, she just shook her head and whispered, "I heard it too." That day, we tried to stay busy, collected firewood, explored a bit, cooked. But something was off. The forest felt wrong. At one point, Marcus wandered off on his own, just for a few minutes, and when he came back, he looked shaken. He said he thought he saw someone standing between the trees, someone pale with long hair, but when he called out, they just vanished. He didn't say much after that. By the second night, we all agreed to keep the fire burning, not for warmth, for comfort. That silence from the night before returned, and again, it felt like everything was holding still, waiting. We sat closer to the fire than we probably needed to. No one talked much. And then, without warning, the fire went out. Just out. No wind, no sparks, just gone. In one instant, the only thing keeping the darkness at bay vanished, and everything around us disappeared into black. We scrambled for flashlights, but they flickered like the batteries were dying, even though we'd all checked them earlier. David relit the fire with shaking hands, and when the flames returned, Jenna let out this quiet, trembling gasp. She pointed to the edge of the clearing, and I swear on everything I saw it too. A shape, human-shaped, but not moving, not blinking, just standing there, a few feet beyond the tree line. No face we could make out, no color or clothes, just a figure that somehow didn't reflect the firelight, like it was darker than the dark around it. Tom shouted at it, "Hey, who's there?" But it didn't react. It didn't run. It didn't flinch. It just stayed there until the fire sparked again, and it was gone. That night, no one slept. We waited for sunrise, watching the woods like our lives depended on it. By morning, we packed everything, fast. No breakfast, no plans to stay a third night, just get out. But the weirdest part, the path we came in on, it wasn't there. I know that sounds impossible, but it was gone. We searched for hours. We followed the creek upstream, thinking maybe it would lead us back to the trail. It didn't. We were walking in circles. That's when things started to really unravel. The deeper we went, the more the forest seemed to turn on us. The light through the trees didn't match the direction of the sun. Sounds echoed wrong. At one point, we heard what we thought was a group of hikers, voices calling to each other. But when we followed them, the sound just kept moving further away, like it was luring us in. We were getting desperate. Phones didn't work. Compass was useless. It spun like crazy. Tom started panicking. He said he felt like something was watching us, copying us. And then, he just ran, bolted into the trees before we could stop him. We spent 2 hours yelling for him, searching. Nothing. No footsteps, no snapped branches. It was like he'd vanished. Eventually, we found the old trail. Wasn't the one we came in on. I'm sure of it. But at that point, we didn't care. We followed it until we saw the road. A ranger was parked there, just off the shoulder. We ran to him like survivors crawling out of a wreck. He looked at us like he was the one seeing a ghost. He said no one was supposed to be out there. The area had been closed for weeks due to unstable ground. No campsites, no trails, just dense, unsafe wilderness. We told him everything. He didn't laugh. He didn't question it. All he said was, "You're lucky you made it out." Then he looked into the woods and said, almost too quietly, "Some people don't." We never found Tom. Search and rescue looked for days. Dogs, drones, the whole 9 yards. Nothing. No tracks, no scent, no trace. He was just gone. Like he'd stepped out of our world entirely. To this day, none of us talk about it unless we absolutely have to. Marcus moved out of state. Jenna refuses to go near the woods. David? He doesn't believe it was a ghost. He thinks it was something older, something that doesn't want to be found, but sometimes lets itself be seen. And me? I haven't camped since. I don't plan to. And if you're listening to this, thinking about heading out into the woods for a little escape, just remember, some places weren't meant to be visited. Some places remember you. I've been camping my whole life. Grew up doing it with my dad. Learned how to track, how to read the land, how to listen. So believe me when I say, I know what the woods are supposed to sound like. And what I experienced that weekend still sits in the back of my mind, like a shadow that never quite fades. It happened about 3 years ago. I needed a break. Mentally, emotionally, everything was just too much. So I did what I've always done when the world gets loud. I packed my gear, left a note for a couple friends, and headed up north to a patch of forest that doesn't see a lot of foot traffic. No marked trails, no other campers, just miles of wilderness and me. I parked my truck at the edge of an old fire road, hiked in about 6 miles, and found a solid clearing near a ridge. It had a good view of the trees below, and I could hear a creek not too far off. The sun was dipping low, golden light cutting through the canopy. It was peaceful, like the kind of silence you don't get anywhere else. Not empty, but alive. I set up my tent, got a small fire going, cooked some food, and just sat back, letting the quiet settle in. But that night, something felt off. I didn't hear anything strange at first. In fact, it was the opposite. I didn't hear the usual sounds. No wind, no bugs, no rustle of small animals in the underbrush, just stillness. heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. I tried to ignore it, convince myself it was just in my head. I'd had a rough couple of weeks. Maybe I was just wound up. I crawled into my tent, zipped it shut, and lay there listening. My heartbeat felt louder than it should have. Every time I started to drift off, I'd snap back awake, not from a noise, but from the absence of one. Then, sometime past midnight, I heard something. It started as a low crunch, way out in the trees. One step, then another, slow, deliberate. Whatever it wasn't an animal. Too heavy, too rhythmic. I reached for my flashlight, turned it on inside the tent, but I didn't unzip it. I just waited, listening. The footsteps got closer. Crunch, pause, crunch, then silence. I held my breath, trying to steady the pounding in my chest. A few minutes passed, nothing. I was about to write it off, tell myself it was a deer moving through, when I heard something speak. It wasn't loud. It was low, like a whisper that wasn't meant for me, just spoken out loud, carelessly, casually. A voice, male maybe, couldn't tell, but it was close, too close, just outside my tent. I didn't understand what it said. It wasn't a language I recognized. It almost sounded like words run backward, twisted. And then, a laugh, soft, wet, like someone breathing through water. I didn't move. I didn't dare move. I just stared at the thin fabric between me and whatever was out there. The nylon shaking slightly, like the air had dropped 10 degrees. Then it walked away. I didn't sleep. Not a second. The sun came up eventually, and with it, the forest came back to life. Birds chirping, leaves rustling. Everything sounded normal again. But I wasn't about to stay a second night. I packed up fast. No breakfast, no coffee. Just shoved everything in my pack and got moving. I didn't even stop to check the ground where I'd heard the footsteps. I didn't want to see what was there. The hike back should have taken 2 hours, maybe 2.5. But something weird happened. The trail felt wrong, like it kept shifting. I'd follow a familiar turn, only to end up staring at the same downed tree I'd passed 20 minutes earlier. I stopped, tried to calm down, reoriented myself using the sun. But every time I thought I was making progress, I'd see something that didn't belong. Once, it was a bundle of sticks tied together with twine hanging from a branch, swaying. Another time, it was a tree with a perfect spiral carved into the bark, fresh, still wet. I hadn't passed either of those on the way in. I knew I hadn't. That's when I started hearing the voice again. Not loud, just under the surface of everything, like it was inside the wind, slipping through the leaves. Same garbled speech, same twisted rhythm. But now, it wasn't behind me. It was following me, matching my steps. I started running. Didn't stop until I hit the fire road. I didn't even realize I'd found it until I burst through the tree line and nearly tripped over my own truck. I threw my gear in the back, climbed into the driver's seat, and didn't look back. The weirdest part? When I got home, I dumped my backpack in the garage and didn't touch it for a week. But when I finally opened it to clean it out, there was something inside that I hadn't packed. At the very bottom, beneath my food bag, my tarp, everything, was a small bundle of sticks tied together with twine, identical to the one I'd seen hanging in the trees. I threw it out, but every now and then, when the night is especially quiet, I swear I can still hear that voice. I've told myself it was just stress, just lack of sleep, just the forest playing tricks on me. But I don't go camping anymore. And if you ever find yourself deep in the woods, all alone, and everything around you suddenly goes quiet, don't wait. Leave before it decides you're worth following. I don't really talk about this story much anymore. People either laugh or they try to explain it away with things that don't add up. But I was there. I know what I saw, and more importantly, what I felt. And if you've ever spent a night deep in the woods, really deep, you know there's a point where things stop feeling natural. It was late summer when my cousin Brian invited me on a weekend camping trip. Nothing too serious, just 2 nights out in a state forest about 3 hours from where I lived. He'd been there before and said it was one of his favorite places. Remote, but legal. No cell signal, no crowds, just thick trees and quiet. We packed light, tent, firewood, basic supplies, nothing fancy. I drove, he navigated. The road got rough about 30 minutes off the highway. Trees arched over the trail like a tunnel, sunlight barely breaking through. It felt isolated, but not in a bad way. We were both in good spirits when we reached the clearing. It was perfect. A flat spot with soft pine needles, right near a shallow stream. The forest felt alive. Birdsong, insects, the rustling of small animals moving through underbrush. We set up camp, made a small fire, and cooked dinner as the sun went down. That first night, everything was normal. But the second night, something was wrong. It started with the quiet. Not sudden, not like someone hit a mute button, but gradual. The natural sounds just sort of faded. First the birds, then the bugs, then the breeze. We noticed it while sitting by the fire. Brian even said, "You hear that?" I said, "No." And that was the problem. The silence had weight to it, like the whole forest was waiting for something. The flames crackled, but everything else just stopped. I shrugged it off, told myself we were just being paranoid. The woods can be weird at night. I'd camped enough to know that. But around midnight, we both woke up to the same thing. Footsteps, not fast, not heavy, just slow, crunching steps in the pine needles, maybe 15 or 20 feet away. I sat up fast, heart racing, and Brian whispered, "You hear that too?" We didn't move. We just listened. The steps circled the tent, not once, but twice, slow and steady. And then they stopped, right behind my side of the tent. I didn't breathe. I didn't speak. I just stared at the nylon wall in front of me, like I could somehow see through it. Then something, I swear to you, leaned in. The shape pushed gently against the fabric from the outside, like a person pressing their forehead into the tent wall, just enough to make the surface bend inward. I could see it, the shadow of it, no face, just a form. I whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Brian unzipped his knife pouch as quietly as he could. I gripped the flashlight, ready to blind whoever, or whatever, was out there. But the pressure on the tent slowly pulled back, like it knew we were ready to fight. Then nothing. The woods were dead quiet. We didn't sleep. Just sat there, backs to the tent walls, watching and waiting until the first gray light of morning broke through the trees. We didn't even talk. As soon as we had enough daylight, we packed up fast. Threw gear in bags, barely folded the tent, didn't eat, didn't say a word. Just wanted out. But something strange happened about 10 minutes into the hike. We passed a tree neither of us remembered, and at about chest height, it had scratch marks. Not from an animal. I know what bear or coyote claw marks look like. These were long, narrow, and deep, like someone dragged 3 fingers straight down through bark. We walked faster, but then we saw another tree a few yards down, more scratches, same pattern, then a third, then a fourth. It was like something had followed us backward from the site, like it knew we were coming and it had marked the path. When we finally reached the car, we didn't say much, just climbed in, slammed the doors, and sat there for a long time. breathing, processing. Brian finally muttered, "That wasn't a person?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We both knew. It didn't leave tracks. It didn't speak. And it knew exactly where our tent was and how to move around it without being seen. Some people think the woods are empty. I don't. Not anymore. Because whatever walked around our tent that night, it wasn't lost. It knew we were there, and I don't think it wanted us to leave.